Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. Just checking if the technology is working. Thank you for joining this event that I nicknamed Pause and Learn with me. I'm Isabelle Lechave, delighted that you're here. And I'm delighted to host this first session dedicated to understanding the role of sensory science in defining wine styles. I'm hosting this session on LinkedIn, and it is also streamed on my YouTube channel, In Vino Academy. And I'm checking here. Apparently, I'm live as well. Fantastic. It's great to have you and to be able to share this presentation. But first, let me introduce myself quickly. So I'm Isabelle Lechave, and today I'm here with you as a wine sensory scientist and tasting coach. I'm helping wine enthusiasts and professionals develop their tasting abilities. But I'm very passionate about wine, sensory education, and sensory research. And what I'm going to share with you is an opinion paper based on my years of experience as an academic and as a researcher in the food and wine industry. I'm basically a hybrid. Um, People, when I'm in industry, sometimes they will tell me, oh, you're too academic, reframe your brain as being part of the industry. And when I'm in academia, my colleagues would say, well, you're thinking too much as an industry person. Well, this is my training and this is how I operate. But today and the next two sessions, my objective is to help you rethink the role of sensory science in wine research and in the wine industry. So why am I hosting the session? Last month, I was delighted to be the keynote speaker at an academic conference called In Vino Scientia, In Vino Analytica Scientia. Sorry, it's a bit difficult to pronounce, and that's why I think the loyal participants are calling this conference In Vino. And it was hosted at the University of California in Davis. And my keynote was opening the session dedicated to sensory analysis and wine styles. When I returned, I posted on LinkedIn a short summary of this session with my recommendation, which was to be more consumer-centric when designing wine styles. And it created some conversation among you, my LinkedIn community. So I thought I would share this talk with you so you can get the background for my recommendations for the wine industry to be more consumer-centric. So I split the original presentation into three parts. So you can spend, with me 15, 20 minutes of your time in this pause and learn, and then you can go back to your busy schedule. So today I will start by defining what sensory science is in the context of the wine industry. Some of you are already part of the sensory community, but don't work in the wine industry. So there will be some examples of how I have applied sensory techniques in the wine industry. And some of you are wine professionals, maybe more on the hospitality and business side and haven't been exposed to sensory science before. That's why I will spend a bit of time today explaining the role of sensory scientists in the wine industry. And next week, the second part will be more about defining wine styles and the critical sensory assets that we use to define those wine styles. And the last part, which will be held on August the 26th, here on LinkedIn or on YouTube, we will be more about how sensory tools can help navigate the market dynamics, get closer to consumer motivation and preference so that we can help, be part of the solution to help the wine industry become more consumer-centric in designing wines that really fit into today's consumers' lifestyles. As I'm presenting, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section wherever you are watching. I might not be able to see them right away, but I will make sure to get back to you as soon as possible on the platform where you are watching this. And if it is the replay that you are watching, feel free as well to leave notes and comments as you see fit. All right. So let's start by the role of sensory science in grape and wine research. And what is wine sensory science? What is sensory science? Sometimes called sensory analysis, sensory evaluation. Actually, we have a definition by the ASTM, the American Society of Testing Materials. There is a very active group of sensory scientists, part of this organization. And I find the definition useful, but quite technical and tactical if you are not part of our world. So sensory science is a scientific discipline that uses human senses to assess consumer products. It evolves, and I have to read because it's quite a complex definition. It involves evoking, measuring, analyzing, interpreting reactions to stimuli perceived through the senses, through the sense of sight, smell, taste, touch, and hearing. It's quite a complex definition. And when I try to explain what I do to people who are not scientists, what I'm saying is that sensory science assesses people's experience with products through their senses. But maybe you can reflect and say, well, yes, well, so what? What is it for? And it's a legitimate question. So what's sensory science for? From a scientific point of view, we are described in the textbook as a function that helps characterize product perceptions and determine if when we taste two products, do we perceive any difference? If we perceive difference, how can we describe this difference? Is the difference big or small? But when we are in the industry, what I've learned, over my career is that sensory data are critical to inform decisions and help minimize the risk to make incorrect conclusions or to launch a product that is a weaker product. So we bring not only, the human senses to evaluate the product, but also the research design and the power of data to guide decisions making. So we inform the creation and development and renovation of consumer products. And really the end goal is to delight the end consumers, to make them happy and enjoy the product so that they can come back and repurchase. So if it's the first time you hear about sensory science or you're meeting a sensory scientist, what I can add to this definition is that we are usually part of the research and development function within a company, or as scientists, we are part of a research organization. And yes, we do inform and guide product development. Our toolbox includes analytical techniques and holistic assessments of the consumption experience by consumers. And our analytical sensory tests are performed with, that might be the difference with what you've seen in the wine industry. Our sensory tests are performed by acuity screened panelists that are trained to perform the task. So that we don't rely on one or two experts. We rely on a group of people that we have screened for their testing abilities, and the power of the group, and their responses give us confidence about the conclusions we are about to make and report to our colleagues. The holistic sensory tests are conducted with consumers of the product category. So if we think about the analytical sensory science, the objective often is to characterize perceptual differences or similarities among a set of wine. Are those products different? So here we have 3 glasses, they are coded. We like to test blind, meaning that the panelists don't know anything about the objective of the test. They are not involved in the day-to-day at the winery. They have no preconceived notion of what the test is about. What we want from them is to use their senses, to trust their senses, and to in the case of this test, where there are 3 products, we tell them, well, 2 products are similar, coming from the same bottle. 1 is different, coming from a different bottle, a different treatment. Tell us which one is different. And that, we have a battery of tests like that, to determine, if 2 products are being perceived as being different. Of course, when they are different, we are wondering, on which sensory modalities. It is more on the appearance, on the smell, on the taste, on the mouthfeel, on the aftertaste. So we try to define this modality, and we use tools like the wine aroma wheel or other lexicons to define those differences. And how big is this difference? We train our panelists to measure. Now remember the definition of the ASTM, it's about measuring, to measure how big the difference is. It could be a small difference or a big difference. And we want to capture that often when we do research. And, over the past maybe 15 years or 20 years, another element that we are capturing is the temporal dynamics of the perception, which perception is coming first and second, what is lingering in mouth. Because all of these characteristics can have an impact on the consumer's experience. And really the goal of analytical sensory science is to deconstruct the product in singular attributes. The consumers won't do that, but for sensory scientists and researchers, that's very important. And that's why, for example, Dr. Anne Noble, who created the wine aroma wheel, she wanted to have a very precise vocabulary because she was looking for aromatic molecules that were responsible for certain aromas that were perceived in wine. So the more precise the term to describe, the more precise is the relationship we can make with the aromatic compounds that is, imparting this particular aroma. So really, we deconstruct everything. And that's not what we are doing with holistic sensory science, where here we really want to characterize the drinking or eating, but in the case of wine, the drinking experience of the consumers, from the first sip, if we only are interested in one sip, but more and more we are looking at normal portion of wine drinking to see how the wine sensory attributes are building up or are changing over the consumption experience. So really we want to understand what consumer likes and dislike. And when I'm saying what, which sensory attributes, and we don't want them to, try to analyze and, tell us if it's coming from the wood or if, it's due to the fact that it went through malolactic. That's our interpretation, the technical part. What we want, to understand is what they like and dislike. And when we have our sensory panel, the analytical part of sensory science, analyzing the same products, we can make those correlations, understand what are the sensory attributes that I like by the consumer. And if I'm looking on this graph that I put the reference so you can see, in the original paper, here on this axis, are the direction of the preference for white wines by a group of consumers. And there are a lot of 1 here, indicating, the individual liking direction of consumers. And on the top, we didn't put, but we correlated with the sensory profiling, the analytical description of the wines by our trained sensory panel. And we can understand by this statistical analysis that this group of consumers like, sweeter wines with more pineapple notes, some apricots, and this other group of consumers, where there are lots of twos here, were more into wines that had, as a technical person, we can analyze and say, more wood influence, because we have some caramel, butterscotch, maybe some astringency that might come from the wood, from the use of oak barrels. And this is the direction of the liking of these consumers. So we use sensory, the analytical science part of sensory to understand the holistic part of the consumer experience. And I don't plan to, go into details with all the techniques. We have a toolbox, full of very interesting tests that can be chosen based on the research objective that you have or the study objective that you have, because that's a critical part in any tasting that we put in place. We really need to understand what's the objective to design the research and to select the test that is the most appropriate to answer the question that our colleagues have. So I invite you to consult on this chapter, which was published in the book edited by Dr. Andy Reynolds, Managing Wine Quality. And it's a chapter dedicated to sensory analysis of wine with all the updated information. It was published in 2022, I believe. And lots of information on how to screen panelists, organize tasting, the different tests, not only on the analytical part, but the holistic part, known as consumer science. So that's what I wanted to share with you as the first part of this series of 3 presentation, which was aiming at defining the role of sensory science in defining wine styles from a technical and consumer perspective. Today, I wanted to share what is sensory science and how it's been used in the wine industry. And next Monday, we will look at the critical sensory assets to define wine styles. Talk about the panels and the different tests that can be selected. Not in details, because as I said, I can refer you to some literature if you are interested to go deep into this understanding of our sensory test. And the last session, which is in 2 weeks, we will look at how sensory tools can help better understand, consumer preference. New generations come and, they are adventurous, they are explorers, and they are looking for different things that their parents or their grandparents, in the beverage world, the alcoholic beverage or non-alcoholic beverage world. So we need to understand a little bit more what are those sensory preference and where wine fits in. And that would be the purpose of this last session. So with that, I will see you next week, but I might check if there are any messages. I don't see any here. Not here. So I will say thank you very much for your attention. Again, I wanted this session to be short and sweet, breaking down the initial presentation in 3 parts. And if you have any questions, feel free to connect, and I will see you next week.